a siege is appropriate? Cutting off power, cutting off water?
Well, I think that Israel does have that right. It is an ongoing situation.
Comrades, friends, colleagues, welcome to another edition of Redline TV. We broadcast to you from blustery and volatile Scotland, and that's just the weather. It's been an interesting week in CLPs around the country, and we have with you tonight Vince Mills, who was until Thursday the policy officer of Glasgow Kelvin CLP, so fresh from that decision last night, and also the chair of the West of Scotland's Unite Education branch. And we also have Richard Parker, a comrade of mine from Edinburgh, Northern and Leith, also fresh from resigning his officer position last night, alongside myself in protest at David Evans' imposition of a gag on Labour members, which has been widely reported around the country and widely resisted around the country. So I'm pleased to introduce the guys, and hopefully we can have an interesting conversation about the implications of these decisions and how we arrived at the decisions we both made in our different parts of the country last night. So Vince, I'll start with you. If you can describe what were the kind of drivers for you and your comrades. I think there was 9 of you altogether that resigned to your posts from Kelvin. What led to that decision?
We had an executive committee meeting, just a regular monthly meeting. And of course, at this point, the crisis in Gaza was getting more and more serious. And so we said, well, what can we do as a constituency to show solidarity and so on? And we decided to do 2 things. One was to go to the demonstration held by Scottish Palestinian Solidarity Campaign. And the second thing was to take a banner with us. And also we decided that we would put a motion to the constituency, calling for a ceasefire and so on. We had no sooner done that than we received a missive from David Evans saying that, asking that you shouldn't go to demonstrations and, you should be very careful about who you're seen with and so on and so forth. But we decided we'd still go, and off we went. The secretary reported that in a Labour organised email which went to all members. And also he gave notice that we were going to discuss this motion. At that point, he received a further missive, this time from Team Scotland, Labour Team Scotland, not the Scottish General Secretary. I think may have been on holiday at the time. I'm not entirely sure. But anyway, that not only reinforced the advice from David Evans, it was even more, how does one put it, restrictive. There should be no motions discussed and so on and so forth. The secretary then wrote to David Evans and copied in the Scottish Party saying, look, here's what we're going to discuss. In terms of the advice we've been given, we don't see how that breaches any of that. So we intend to go ahead with this. And got a response to the effect, absolutely not. You cannot talk about this at all. And from any angle, however well-intentioned, what's to that effect. At which point we collectively thought, what is the point? If a major and really really important issue is happening, and every news bulletin, every newspaper's covering it, and as a Labour Party we can't talk about it, even although the Labour Party rules state that's one of the prime purposes of the party. If we can't do this, what is the point of us officering this unit of the organisation? So at that point, we collectively decided we would do that, and we would go public on it, and we'd tell the membership we were doing it.
Thanks, Vince. What was, before I come to you, Richard, what was striking, I thought, about Evans' missive, his directive to CLPs, was how porous it was. And your experience, Vince, seems to bear that out. It had certain restrictions, but it clearly was designed to capture pretty much everything a CLP could possibly decide to do. And I think it was issued wasn't it, on Monday? This was one of ours, as Richard will say in a moment, I'm sure. This was one of our reservations last night. I'm using the word reservations quite diplomatically, but it contained a demonstrable falsehood when it said that the party is now supportive of the Gazan population having access to food, water and electricity. Extremely generous concession on their part. But in fact, on the Monday, which is I think when Evans' directive was issued, that was not the case. So we were being asked as executive officers to disseminate a falsehood to members, essentially. Richard, can you describe, because we had what might be described as quite a strange experience while I think absolutely doing the right thing last night.
I think, Mike, for us, there are a couple of longer term issues, but definitely the flashpoint has been this denial of party democracy. That's really what's cut to the heart of this motion. We're seeing this horrendous resumption of violence in Israel and Gaza, and I feel it's beholden on me, and I think this is a feeling shared by the rest of us who left last night, that we must be calling for an immediate ceasefire to the hostilities, and that's the position that we want the party to take. And the inability of us to express it in any other way led to us taking the most drastic action we could have done, short of resigning our membership. And I hope that it does send the message that we intended it to the highest level of the party, that this cannot continue. We are a democratic socialist party, and we must have democracy at the centre of that.
I think it absolutely, for all of us, I'm sure it was the case with you and your comrades in Kelvin, Vince. It wasn't just the silencing of members around this issue. This is part of a general project that's been well in place for 2 years now, of shutting down democracy, of closing down the space for discussion and debate, policy making. It's not simply about dissent, is it, Vincent? Just to go back to you, Vince, for a moment, the polling seems to confirm that Starmer and the coterie around him are out of step, not only with Labour Party opinion, but with public opinion on Israel-Gaza. And I wonder if you see this as such a miscalculation on his part, and there has been a wee bit of rowing back, even if it is performative and limited. Do you see this as part of a meaningful fight back against Starmer's project in the party?
Yes, I would tend to agree with that. I do think that he's probably been taken aback, certainly by the reaction of many Muslim councillors and Muslim members of the party, which I think will concern him, given the context of concern by many members of the party who are Asian or black, who feel that racism that they experience hasn't been treated as seriously as other people who suffer racism. So I think that will be a concern. Can I just add one other dimension here, Mike? There's a specific issue in relation to Scotland. The Scottish Labour Party is supposed to be autonomous in these matters. There is nothing to stop an Asawa bringing the executive together, having a discussion about this, and taking a position which is unique, if you like, to Scotland. Nothing at all. And as I understand it, Anas has personally been saying privately, there was some indication of an article in the Daily Record the other day, that he's not comfortable with the stand that the party's taking at a UK level. And for me, it's all a bit unfortunate, because, of course, we copied the Scottish Labour Party into a letter to David Evans, so they knew what our concerns were.
Yeah.
So, I mean, look, if Anas now comes out and says, I'm coming to the demonstration, we really need to stand by this, by the Gaza people and so on, great, better the sinner who repents and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But frankly, I mean, more should have been done already, and we need a very clear position. As Richard was saying, it's absolutely necessary that we say we want a ceasefire now. Yeah.
And I guess that's been one of the issues, and we ought to extend some kind of credit to Sarwar, because he did come out quite early against collective punishment, which was a step change away from what Starmer was saying, although he's been a wee bit quieter. I wonder if the London office has had a word with him. But Richard, when we walked out, and it should be said that after I asked our chair last night, would you resist David Evans' directive and accommodate a discussion on Israel-Palestine, and particularly the events in Gaza, when he refused and made clear that he was going to abide by those guidelines, you made a statement and we, the officers that were present on the night, walked out. From your own point of view, and it'd be interesting, Vince, what you think of this. Do you think our demonstration of solidarity with the people of Palestine, with our members, really, because we are, as officers, custodians of the democratic rights of our members, and we owe them that responsibility. Do you think we are in a position in our CLP to win people over to that point of view, maybe people who were unpersuaded of our case previously, but our demonstration might have won people over?
Absolutely. I mean, we're acting in accordance with our consciences, which are governed in this case by upholding international law. There is a very clear consensus in the country that the actions that and the stance taken by the Labour Party are not representative of the way that people in Britain are feeling. So I have no doubt in my mind that we will be able to reach out through this action to members of our CLP, as well as beyond. Membership exists beyond the people who are regular CLP attenders. And I know that we are speaking to them as much as we are speaking to the people who are in that room.
Yeah. And there's always been this tension, hasn't there? And I guess David Evans is the exemplar of it, between the parliamentary party and the mass membership, who exactly has authority over the movement and in terms of making decisions. Did Vince, when you and your comrades made this decision, how did it resonate? Did it resonate in the wider CLP? And was there an intention there, as Richard says, to signal beyond the party to the wider community, to the country, that there is a left in the Labour Party and we are still alive and kicking?
Unfortunately, because the Secretary had resigned, the meeting which was scheduled, the CLP meeting which was scheduled for Thursday night, didn't take place because it's his Zoom call that was actually the vehicle for the meeting. So there was no meeting, so we didn't get any immediate feedback. But certainly since then, you've probably noticed there's been a lot of social media, and there's been a lot of actually mainstream media picked up on it. And I think it's evident from that there's a resonance with what we've done. And I hope a beginning of a pushback from party members. As Richard was saying, whether or not they actually agree with us on the core of the issue, about what Israel should or shouldn't be doing, that they nevertheless recognise that they've got a right to talk about it, for God's sake, And
that's one of the ways that the socialist left can distinguish ourselves, isn't it? By demonstrating to members who are and affiliates who are perhaps outside our orbit that we are the ones protecting their rights and standing up for their autonomy. I wonder, folks, just to change tack a little bit, there's been an awful lot of discussion about the allegations of a hierarchy of racism in the party, obviously from the Ford report. The Labour Muslim Network, BME members have all raised these concerns. Is there a link, in your view, and I'll ask you first, Richard, is there a link between the kind of mindset, the political psychology, whereby certain groups of people are more worthy of our solidarity, others are less worthy within the party, and how Starmer has approached the Israel-Palestine conflict?
Thanks, Mike. And I think it's first very important to state that the Labour Party is no place for any kind of discrimination whatsoever, and that, especially in our community, I think we have a very positive way of, reinforcing and stressing that. Certainly, according to the Ford report, there is the clear indication that there is a hierarchy of racism within the party. And I know I'm not alone in knowing that needs to urgently change. We are a movement that brings people together, and everyone is of equal value in that movement. And we need to make sure that that is reflected from the top to the bottom of our institutions in the way that we handle any type of discrimination. I can understand that Keir Starmer has a priority of, as he sees it, rehabilitating the party after the 2019 election and the anti-Semitism scandal. And I would urge him to take the guidance of the Ford report to make sure that he starts implementing a system that takes account of all types of discrimination.
Thanks, Richard. Vince, is it an extension of these issues that Martin Ford identified within the party?
I think the politics that's driving this is Starmer's need to make the Labour Party absolutely acceptable in the eyes of capital and the principal proponents of empire, the United States and the United States allies. It was that his eyes been on that ball. That means in international politics that you must support Israel. Israel is the hand of the United States in the Middle East. Therefore, support for it is absolute. No question is allowed. It was that I think Starmer was trying to achieve, rather than what impact it had on Muslim members of the Labour Party. But you're nevertheless right. It's interesting that he never paused to think. There was no he never used language anywhere where he sought to address concerns that they might have. So that's a very important point. Whereas, as we know, had that been the case in relation to anti-Semitism, he would have been clear to make it, absolutely indisputable that he was not in any way, shape, or form going to tolerate anti-Semitism. And by the way, on that issue, Glasgow has a long history of support for the Jewish community, right back to the days of the Red Clydeside and Manny Shinwell. But of course, pre-war and the early years of the war, Glasgow MPs like Janie Buchan were absolutely central to the campaign of finding refuge from the Jewish population fleeing the Nazis. So we've got a strong history of support for the Jewish people that we would like also to put on record and continue to sustain, despite the fact that there's now this terrible conflict in the Middle East.
Absolutely. It's something that we have been kind of forced into a corner of constantly reminding ourselves, but restating again and again that the anti-fascist, the anti-racist struggle is indivisible. It can't be selective in any way. Comrades, I'm going to leave you with this question. We saw two seismic, again, the word has been rolled out, by-election victories for the party yesterday in previous Tory strongholds, and obviously this is serving a quite timely purpose for the leadership of the party. That they're going through a number of different problems at the moment, lots of resignations, either ourselves from officer posts or councillors across England, likely more to come. What would you say is the significance of those two victories? And finally, I guess there's two parts to my question. What message do you send out to other executive post holders around the country, given our action last night? And I'll start with you, Richard.
Thanks, Mike. And I think there's a very simple way to sum this up, and that is, let us not gain the world and lose our souls. I think that's at the heart of it. I believe fundamentally that the Labour Party is the best way of transforming Britain for the better, making sure that we have an economy that works for working people. And I am so happy that we are beginning to make that positive ground. What concerns me is the processes that are going in to inhibit members as we are making this success. Let us kick out the Tories. Let's make sure that we've got a Labour Party that's going to rebuild Britain and that has an active democratic membership there to guide it. That is the role of the members. We are the collective conscience of the party. Yeah. Let's go forward and repair all the damage that the last 13 years of these Tories have done.
And I think we would say that irrespective of who was in the leadership at any one point. I mean, that I'm sure we'd all agree was one of the weaknesses of the Corbyn project, that we weren't able to build a movement that would extend permission and leverage to the Corbyn cabinet to take forward his project. He found himself isolated very quickly, didn't he, without that ballast and without that legitimisation of a mass movement underneath him. Vince, what's your thoughts on those two questions?
I think the by-election results are fascinating because what they tend to show instantly. I've seen Tamworth. I haven't actually seen the other by-election, how the Labour vote changed from 2019. But in the case of our own by-election up here in Hamilton and in Tamworth, you'll notice that in Hamilton, the actual number of people voting Labour dropped compared to 20. In Tamworth, I think it might have been marginally better, but it was marginal. So what we seem to be seeing is that although people hate the Tories, there's no great love for Labour either.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't be surprised, because it isn't just in issues like the Middle East to begin to see people change. People were already demanding that, you know, power for the services be brought back into public ownership. And even Tory polling was saying that, you know. And our leadership was turning the proverbial blind eye to what the people actually wanted. And there's clear evidence there's economic radicalism in the working class. Clear evidence. It's been ignored. And the reason it's been ignored is back to the point I was making earlier on, that what we have got is essentially a neoliberal clique running the Labour Party again.
Yeah.
And how that played out in terms of international relationships with Jeremy Corbyn was he would never have tolerated such a blatant attempt at naked imperialism in the Middle East. And that, more than anything else, frightened the horses in terms of the powers that be in Britain. So my feeling at the moment is what appears to be happening is the Tories are so bad people will vote them out, that Labour will get in on the basis of a half-hearted, if I may put it that way, political support from the working class. We already lost the last time we had New Labour in power, millions of working class votes as the New Labour project extended. My guess is that'll happen much more quickly. I think the support such as it is for Labour will fracture if they don't change the direction. And we'll find ourselves in 5 years' time in an election where, God knows, by this time the ultra-right might even have begun to build a base because of the failure of us on the left to actually build a serious base for social change in the United Kingdom. So I think we need to take all that on board and get busy transforming the Labour Party again into a weapon, if not for socialism, at least social democracy.
Yes. Apathy, as you say, Vince, is a very dangerous electoral friend, a very capricious electoral friend, and it seems like that is exactly what we're relying on at the moment. I was at a lovely meeting, as was Richard, with Neil Finlay, an old comrade you know very well, an ex-MSP and councillor in Scotland. And one thing we took out that meeting, Vince, was Neil's reminder that pessimism and socialism are not bedfellows. We have to remain positive, we have to remain hopeful. And I'm delighted to have spent a wee bit of time with two very positive and hopeful comrades who have done something last night that I think has sent the beginnings of a fight back in Scotland, and reminded everyone that there are positive and hopeful comrades out there who are still willing to take difficult decisions to take the fight to this neoliberal clique, as Vince describes them. Comrades, good luck. Thanks so much for your time, and all the best for everything you do in the future. Thank you.
Plenty for them.